All right. Shall we have a little check-in? Or shall we dive straight into the conversation about the map?
I want to dive in.
All right.
Yeah, me too, actually. I want to see the map. Oh.
Have there been any problems in logging into MindMeister and working with the map?
No.
Ray, have you had a chance to? You're on
Sorry,
mute.
I'm muted. I have not had a chance to look at it, so I'm going to just go along, and I will at some point after the call I will go through it.
Okay. Well, we're going to go through it.
I've seen stuff like this, so
yeah. Well, we're going to go through it on the call. So yeah. I'm going to share my. I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to share my screen. And well, I think the best place to start is with the development process, which is at the top. And so I'm just going to bring it up now. Curious as to how this goes. Okay. And I want there. Can all of you see the mind map?
Yes. It's tiny though.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Let's bring this up full. And how's that?
better.
Can you read the development stages?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, I'm going to bring it up a little bit more. There we go.
That's good.
So we're in phase 1 right now. Now, remember, this is a mind map. I've just downloaded this from my thoughts. And so we're planning this. So we're working it out together. But we do know that we're going to be finished our calls as of December, middle of December of this year. And my sense is now, as we're in this mapping process, is that we're going to have a final, we're going to have a fairly robust version of this map when we're finished our calls. So for the next month, we can continue to populate it with ideas, to organize, to make notes, to ask questions. And the objective then is to have a document that we can then use for the second phase, which is to bring together a larger group of people in person in a workshop kind of setting for a day, ish, maybe 4 hours or something. We can decide what that day is going to look like. And I'm suggesting that would happen in January. And then that would lead to another prototype development day that would be in Kaslo with another group of people, maybe some overlap, certainly with the people. And through that process, we are prototyping the program. We're growing it, we're getting ideas, we're fleshing it out, we're getting a clearer and clearer sense of what we think people want and what will work. And then I've put in phase 4 is taking that prototype and bringing together the team that would be delivering the program. So plus others, but we'll be pulling in, reducing the number of people, the people that are going to be tasked with actually delivering the program to the participants, to the clients, and they will do a prototyping process. And the objective of that would be that it was basically ready for delivery with likely the need to still develop content, but we'll know what the basic areas of content are. And then the fifth phase of development is the implementation, which is 4 cohorts over a year. And I think we need to continue to look at that as the development until we've gone through the program fully. We're still in development, even though we're also in delivery. And then, of course, it's going to evolve from there. So any thoughts on this?
Looks great, John, to me.
Yeah, that works.
You see the dates.
Muted? No, I'm not anymore. Just one thing, I can't see it anymore, but I'm remembering that you put the intake as June.
Why
That's
can't you see it, Julian?
Huh?
Why can't you see it?
Because I started talking. Oh, it's really tiny now over there, and I don't know how to make that.
Can you change your view up in the
I just
right-hand
swapped.
corner?
Change the display.
I
Valerie.
followed the instructions and swap. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm just curious about the intake in June, and whether you think that's obviously what's your thinking behind that?
When I thought about you want July and August, I believe, the Sentinel to be delivering corporate retreats.
We've heard from at least one person that that's probably arbitrarily not correct, and it could be executive retreats, could be any time in the year. I think we made that up, so let's remove that restriction.
All right. Well, that's what drove this. And then also thinking about the development process, we can think up what we want the program to be between now and early in the new year. But to actually have the material developed is another thing. And I kind of thought, well, can we do that in the next 6 months? And so I just sensed my way into June as the point at which we would be ready.
Okay, so let's say definitely June and possibly March, and let's just see. I have no idea what it all takes, and
well, we have to, yeah. So now what we need to do is go through the scope of the program from other perspectives, and we'll get a better sense of what it is that we need to create in order for us to have that first intake of participants. Okay.
Yeah, great, John.
Any other comments or questions about this
Wasn't there
development stages?
about a prototype cohort?
David, I can't hear you very
Oh,
clearly.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, but the volume is very low and I can't adjust my volume. So
No, okay. So wasn't there a thought about a prototyping cohort?
yes. And that's still a possibility that first cohort could be.
excuse me just a second. Florence, would you mind sending Rigo the Zoom link? He wants to join the call.
Again, whoever's snappling or crackling something.
Well, that might be me. I just want to know that Florence got that, heard that.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay, great.
So, David, I'm just going to put a note here on the first cohort. What would we call that? This could be I'm going to say team prototyping cohort. There. Yes, like that. Okay. Any other comments, questions about the development stages? Okay, we'll come back to it, and after we've gone through the other areas of the map and ask ourselves, is this realistic? Do we want to keep these dates? Do we want to shift them? So I'm going to come over here. And so we can take a look at the systems and structures. At the top of this list is the applicant guidelines. When we think of who's going to participate in this, we can also think about how those applicants will come to the program, who they might come through, and the level of their experience with health and illness. Sorry, I'm having trouble navigating now. There we go. Stop it. Jeez. Can you see this clearly now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, John.
We have to think about the participants from an applicant perspective. Do they just call up and sign up and pay their fee? Or do we have some guidelines as to how they come into the process, come into the program? Is there an actual application process? Even if there aren't any intention of turning somebody away, would there not still be an application process that would unfold so that we can prepare the participant for beginning the program? But are there any screening criteria?
Are you asking for input on that now, John?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I would have to say about that is yes. One example that comes to mind is the MAPS process for their MDMA trial. And they have a very high level of processing people, discerning people, because they want their, I shouldn't really be telling this, but they want good results. So they're very specific about where it's about post-traumatic stress, and they're very specific. If it's someone that's had like multiple stressful, traumatic experiences, particularly in their childhood, they actually don't take them. They like to take somebody that had a bomb go off in a war zone, and then, you know, like that specific thing, that's what they deal with. So for the sake of getting good results in the parameters that they have. So I'm not saying we should be that restrictive about it, but I do think there are some, you know, if I think about Landmark, there is a mental health aspect.
Right.
that people-
So we need to come up with those criteria.
yeah.
That process needs to be determined. So how do we do that? Is that a small group of our development team?
I think so. I think that you need to have a task force that maybe specializes in that intake team, and probably develop a protocol around interviews, and so questionnaire and then interviews.
And before moving into developing the detail, actually creating sort of parameters of the intention of who this is for at a higher level, so that that's what informs the design, and then bringing that back to community of, is the detail that's being developed actually consistent with, like, is it sufficiently allowing so that people can actually participate in the work, and does it protect people in participating?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've added a little note here.
So maybe somewhere we want to have a list of accountabilities we'll need to feel like someone needs to be accountable for managing that, the creation of the guidelines for applicants. It's like a position to be filled kind of thing. Does it make sense?
Yes, it does.
Does.
Say that again, David. I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Like at this point, as we explore that, it sounds like now we can list somewhere, we need someone accountable for the development of these guidelines. Like that is we need someone who's going to take that on.
Take it on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, we'll design something, and then when we prototype, we'll discover, oh, we didn't think of that, and it gets updated.
Mm-hmm. And does anyone want to take this on? Who's on this call right now?
What about we go through the whole map, see what kind of accountabilities really emerge in terms of needs for the design, and then we start distributing that. Could we do that?
Yeah.
And also highlight the sense of urgency in the different components. Some pieces can wait
Yeah.
a little bit later. Some need to be done earlier.
Can I ask a question on this applicant guidelines?
Go ahead, Marsha.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think that's a good idea to go through the whole thing before we select accountabilities and prioritize them. So we're talking about applicants who are applying to various courses.
We're talking about applicants to the Lasting Health Program.
Okay, I guess I'm not really clear what that means. So for instance, there's a workshop going on right now up at the Sentinel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is that part of the Lasting Health Program, or is that just, it's not? Okay. So, you know, it seems to me, so there'll be a cohort of applicants who are going through this entire program called Lasting Health, or they won't be taking specific courses within that program?
That's a question actually that's on the map here. But I think what's for this process is to recognize is that we are going to have a Lasting Health Program with a cohort that goes through the whole program together.
Okay.
we may find that we have elements of the program that people could participate in separate from being part of a cohort going through the Lasting Health program. I don't know.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Shall we move on to the program training team, the program delivery?
Yeah.
There's going to be a team of people that are tasked with delivering the program. And there is, we need to develop the program, the guides for them, the coaches, the practitioners, peer supporters, other people. That's material that's happening behind the scene to support the delivery of the program, not to be the content of the program. And that's the vision of the Lasting Health program. Those fundamentals expanded, a program manual created, and that kind of thing. Any thoughts and comments about that?
Well, my comment, John, is I would think not that we're assigning accountables, but the same thing, we'll assign an accountable for each of these pieces, and I would imagine that's that's yours with overseeing like that. This is the overseeing of the program delivery, and that I think as the program director would be you.
Yeah, I think so, and it may involve others as well.
Oh, definitely, of course, and I think it's actually putting it out to people to ask them if they would like to apply to be part of the program.
Yeah, and when we've come back here, we see that stop that. I don't know why I keep coming up with windows. That when we bring together phase 4, the training team prototyping here, that it would be this group, the program training team.
Yeah, and for instance, so this is my thought about this, and it also responds a little bit to what Marsha was just saying. So Richard and I will definitely be taking this training that Sasha's offering, which is very similar to the MAPS guidelines for training for psychedelic assisted therapy. And we'll probably do that in the spring when he offers it the next time. I invite any of you guys on the call to join us. And so I'm imagining that, therefore, Richard and I will be able to offer that service as part of the Lasting Health program. If somebody would want to have a psychedelic assisted therapeutic session for trauma release, we will be able to provide that. Maybe others on the call might, and certainly Sasha and Devin can. And then, but that would also be something we might do in the sort of general programming of the Sentinel. So,
right.
Yeah, and being with that training group, I would see that there's a number of people that are in the location and on the court there, that it would be a in-person thing, and people would be on site to do trainings and development. Possibly.
I don't know about training development, Richard, but it would be to deliver, to deliver a service. Like
Yeah. I'm going back to what John's got on the
okay.
board here that I can't see right now, but It says developing program training team, program delivery. Oh, that's David. Okay, great. Okay.
David just added a note there.
Yeah, just clicked on it because I'm on the program. I didn't add that bubble.
Say that again, David.
I think it just says where I am. In another bubble, it'll move.
Okay. Oh,
Here you go.
right. I've wondered what happens when there's a bunch of people jumping around in the map.
But I mean, and so since I'm speaking, inside of that program training team, the whole program delivery, like there's a bunch more we can add, right? It's not only the creating the guidelines, it's like who do we have and how do we select coaches, practitioners?
Yes.
Do we create a peer support? Like who selects, like how they get added? What's the onboarding process? What kind of structures do we need for ongoing training and development? And the assessment of their performance. I mean, there's a whole world in there, right?
Yes, there's a whole world in there. Yeah. In essence, if we think of this as a school, we're creating a school.
It's kind of like I mean, it has some similar notions of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an education training kind of component to it.
Yeah. Okay. Any more comments, questions about the program training team? Could I have one. Could I put a different label on that would represent this more accurately?
What label?
Program training team.
I think it says it.
Okay. David, I see you're adding another bubble there. Team selection, hiring, yes. And we can keep it, this area can definitely be, it can actually probably be moved into its own bubble and expanded, separate from development of systems and structures.
This is good for now.
Yeah. Okay, then the next one on down the list is connectivity technologies. We need a web platform for the delivery of the program. Much of the program, some of the, a lot of the program is going to happen in person in what I'm calling the resident weeks. But the program will be held basically delivered as a virtual program. And we need a platform for that. And we need technical support for that. I would love to see the development of an app. And I don't know what's involved in that, if there's one that exists that can be customized for this, but a way for participants to track themselves individually, for day-by-day communication and feeding in of information from participants. I see that as a significant part of the opportunity to gather data and to evaluate both individually and the program as a whole, to provide day-by-day support, to provide day-by-day reminders, all kinds of things that can happen through technology.
So I think it's a great idea to eventually have that. I think app development is really, really expensive. I think as a as a first approximation, a combination of existing products can do the trick. So until we get a better sense of what do we want to track, how do we want to track it, and how do we want everything to be integrated. But as a first approximation, a combination of something like Slack for communication, update, and all of that.
Yeah.
There's tons of tracking apps that already exist that you can customize and still retrieve the data as the person running it.
Yeah.
We could put together some form of a vision of what do we want this technology to provide? How do we piece together a first solution, test it, and then once we get a better sense, we can see if we can get the budget to actually invest in a team to develop a in-house app kind of thing.
Great. Are you familiar with any of those apps? Do you use Slack?
Yeah, me and Helena, and I'm sure others. And I'm not attached to Slack. I'm just saying that there's some. Yeah. It would require another task force to actually get a sense of, let's get a sense of what's needed, what would support the delivery of this program. And once we have collected that, then we can put together a task force who's going to say, okay, what's the most usable and cheap version of a product or a combination of products that's going to do the trick.
I have experience with like 3 or 4 of these programs. Slack, I've used Asana and Wrike, and also Basecamp. So when you get to that level of deciding, we use Asana, it's free. And I think for now, because I used Wrike and it's paid to get the features, but if you guys need something right now that's free, that has a lot of functions, I recommend Asana.
Yeah.
Ray, can you put that information on here now? Are you able to do that?
I am not in there right now, but I can get in there and do that. It's just ASANA. Asana. That's how it's.
I know that one.
Somebody wants to add it.
Yeah.
David, can you add those to this?
I'll update this.
Since you're in there already?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And how's it going, Ray, with Asana?
It's good. We've moved away from using it a little bit because we also use all kinds of add-ons into Gmail, like Boomerang and all these other things. So we use it for very specific things right now. I think for a team like this, like my challenge is getting. Actually, you probably will have the same challenge. Not everybody wants to be organized on the digital side of things. So it's really the people who use this are going to be in the core, either administration or development. Do you know what I mean? Like we tried to get the whole team to use it, right? But then it was like, and the whole team using Gmail and Google Drive and this new mind mapping program. And it's just like, wait a sec. There's people that specialize in technological. So we've really had to really look at, okay, what's the most simple for people to use. And honestly, Asana is because you can have things go to email. So when you, just like most task management programs, if you post a task and you assign people to follow it, if you have somebody really managing it well, it can work well even for people who don't use it, because they can then respond to the email and it will automatically update the task, right? And it also integrates with Gmail. So if you guys are you guys using, for the Sentinel, whatever your domain name, are you using Google Apps? Like as your Gmail program or email program, are you using Gmail?
Not really.
I mean, I highly recommend that too.
It's a bit messy right
now. Everything integrates, right, with Gmail. So Asana, Slack, everything, so you're in Gmail and like Asana is integrated into your Gmail. It's integrated into your Google Drive, etc. Right? So it's just easy to have things when everything's connected.
There's 2 conversations, because Asana is a task management product. So it's if we need a product to support the creation of this, and I think maybe I'm confused, but my understanding here was the development of what are we going to use with the participants as they get the program delivered, them
right.
track.
Yeah, you know what? Asana probably has that capability because there's different levels of permissions and things that people can see. So, for example, my web developer uses Basecamp, and she uses Basecamp for all of her clients, right? So if she's doing a she's designing somebody's website, she puts a project on there called their website, and then I only can access my website on that. So you would have to go into each of these programs and see which one would be the best.
Yeah.
Asana, I'm sure, we don't do the paid version, right? So the paid version of Asana has so many more functionality. So I'm pretty sure you could probably add as many users as you want and then have them only accessing certain projects, and then you'd have everything in one place, right? So you'd have management and clients in the same one. So
that really appeals to me. I think it would be wonderful to find that.
And it's,
whatever that is.
and it would be free for people who are just coming in at a lower level or whatever. And if you guys did the paid version, you'd probably have more. But again, like I said, you'd have to look at each one and really look at it and really see which would work for you. Like we paid for Rike for a while. We paid $100 for Rike, but that's more like high level project management. I don't think that's so much. I mean, there probably is functions for bringing in regular clients on that one too.
Yeah.
Basecamp, like I said, worked really well, but I think that may be too simplistic. But again, I only experienced Basecamp from a client perspective, so maybe that's why it's meant to be simplistic. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it depends what side you're on, like what side of the screen you're on. Slack, I know a lot of people use Slack, again, for communicating. I tried it a little bit. It wasn't suitable for what our needs were, but yeah, check
this is fantastic. Thank you so much, Ray and David. I see you're populating this area. This is wonderful. This is just, I find it thrilling to see the mind map expanding.
And just to say something quickly about the technology aspect, that might be something that's important to look at when we're selecting participants, is their level of comfort with using technology. And some people might need like an assistant pretty regularly to make that work.
And also just, I've, again, lots of experience in this realm with clients too. We have a medical record tracking software. That's how we communicate. And, you know, people, this is how we do the long-term health programs with people, because it's embedded in our medical record software as a patient portal, so they can come in and access all their medical records, see what's been written to them, see all the labs that they've submitted to us over time. You know, we put in automatic reminders to come back to things. And, you know, I don't know how big the medical component's going to be in what you guys do, because you might start to have to think about if you're keeping people's personal information somewhere, like, you know, where is that line cross over? Because medical record softwares are like, you know, government, blah, 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 like super triple, you know, confidentiality, check, security, blah, blah, blah. So, you know,
if we keep following the thought, Ray, that we spoke about last time, that I mean, this lends more weight to the idea of a participant having an organization like yours supporting participants, and all of that then would live with you.
Right.
They're going through the Lasting Health Program, and then there's some kind of a bridge between that data.
Yeah, just something to be aware of. So yeah, what I was going to say is that those programs have that built in. So there's the back end. So it's kind of like interesting because there's almost more like when you're looking at those programs, you know, what the medical record softwares are doing is getting people's participation in their health, right? So it's just looking at the theme of that and how they're doing that. So that would be
what's the name of that?
Well, there's many. The one that we use is Charm, like CHARMM. It definitely is overkill for what you guys are doing, for sure, and it wouldn't have the functionality that you guys need for the broader stuff. But because it is medical records, but because it's naturopathic or holistic, you know, it has this built in, like it's designed to create a relationship with somebody over time and get them interested and participatory in their health. Right?
David, well, while you're adding here, could you add that in? Because we need to think about it just a bit more, and how we would relate to the participant and support the participant to be involved in that.
Yeah. We just had, because it's a big topic in this field. So we just sent our clinic admin supervisor, staff person to like a conference down in Washington on this software and how they're developing more and more. So even if somebody who wants to be on this part of the development even want to have an hour talking with her about that and their experience there, I can definitely set that up.
Can you add that note as well, David?
Yes.
David, just one thing. Would you be able to add under the app development, find existing products, a line called iThrive? I tried to put it in and I got really scared that I was going to delete something. So if you could put it in for me, I'd appreciate it.
Is that Rigo?
Yes, it is. It's a program we use at our clinic that stays in touch with all cancer patients that we treat, and it splits it checks in on the patient every day, and it divides. It's like what they call a strength report or a health report on diet, movement, environment, rejuvenation, and spirit. I don't know if that's what you're looking for. I think it's a wonderful tool. I think it needs a lot of development still, and I think it's probably going to be relatively expensive. I don't know the cost, but so far, pardon? Yeah, it's just I've tried it out as a mock patient myself, and I thought it was really nice. I just don't know really how much feedback the clinic gets back. I think it's still in development. So when like a patient writes, they have to answer this questionnaire, and there's certain questions that if a patient answers them and it answers them as a risk, for example, like, oh, I'm very distressed, or my pain scale is 8 out of 10. That almost sends like a little flag back to the clinic being like, oh, we should maybe check in with the patient about this or this or this. So it has a lot of tools in place. It's maybe not something that we'd want to use, but if you try it out, maybe there's some great ideas that we could borrow from.
And that's a great segue into what I'm calling evaluation, because what you're mentioning there makes me think of this functionality quotient. That's just my words for a metric of all the things that you're talking about. Some way for us, for the client participant, and for the Sentinel and the program as a whole, and those who are working with their clients, to instill in the client this sense of being able to look at what's going on with themselves, and then having some way in the totality of it, and then have some way of attaching a metric to it. And if you're choosing 8 out of 10 is my pain level today, that's the kind of thing. But there's many, many, many other factors that would feed into that functionality quotient. Thank you, Rigo.
Welcome, Rigo. Nice to see you.
And I've added everything either in a comment or in a note, but I've captured, I think, what was requested.
Thank you, David. So, any other comments, questions about connectivity technologies? Shall we move on to evaluation?
That's a loud yes.
This first healing line assessment, again, this is something that I've developed that in integral coaching, I'm sure many of you who are coaches are maybe aware of what using lines of development as a lens. And in integral coaching, there are 6 basic ones, which are the somatic line of development, the emotional line, the moral line, spiritual line, interpersonal line, and emotional line. And I work with and have developed a 7th one, which I call the healing line. And there are a lot of points of development that stand behind one's basic relationship to their own health and their ability to heal. That are one could say they break down into orientation. These are the areas that I work with. One's orientation in terms of their way of being in the world. But then there's also beliefs and behaviors. And there's many, many, many points along the line of development for each one of those areas that comprise the healing line as a whole. And I find it a really effective tool, and I'm really excited about other people working with it. And I think it would support a way of intake and assessment for the creation of a coaching program, as well as provide a way of evaluating the development of a participant. So that's one. And then the functionality quotient, as I explained, seems to me very close to what Rigo was just describing. The I Thrive and some of these others may do. And then there's things like symptomology tracking. I don't know what the naturopaths would call this, but for myself, it's something that I've learned to pay attention to as I've at times have experienced dozens of symptoms that I've had to learn the interrelationship between them, and I've had to learn how to pay attention to them without that effort to pay attention dominating my life. And I think this is an area where a participant begins to learn the difference between, to be able to move what has been subjective to objectivity. And when one trains themselves with presence, for example, through mindfulness, one begins to be able to shift one's subjectivity towards objectivity, and then that opens up a whole world of one's ability to self-assess and to be accurate about what they're experiencing. And then down here, medical reports, the things that that people, participants will come with into the program from working with a clinic like Rigo's or Gray's.
Did you want a name for, sorry, did you want a name for those symptoms?
Yeah.
Like I call them, we learned them about them, they're called general markers of health.
Is that in this area, symptomology tracking that I'm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way we do that is
what did you say again? What are they called? General
markers of health is the sort of term that it could be called anything, obviously, but
yeah,
that's what we use in naturopathic medicine. And
yeah,
you know, we go through, you know, somebody comes in with a chief complaint, as we call it, chief concern, as it's been changed to, the evolution. And then, you know, they might be concerned about X, right, knee, but then there's these general markers of health that, you know, somebody might not think themselves as are a problem. And so they fall into categories like mood, hormones, sleep, energy, like energy patterns. And there's all kinds of algorithms now, you know, and I've got different symptomology tracking questionnaires that groups symptoms into functional, you know, functional sets, like seemingly unrelated symptoms into functional sets that would point at certain organ systems, certain types of like stages of stress, certain types and stages of hormone decline. So if you're thinking of lasting health, right, these are the things like if you've always had loose stool your whole life, you might not think that's a problem, but that would go on our marker of always having had, loose stool or whatever. So, and homeopaths and naturopaths both are really good at this kind of thing because when something gets better for somebody, they often don't notice. So, so, bowel movements will change, sleeping patterns will change, mood will change, energy will change. And you have to have very objective ways of asking these questions that aren't like, how are you feeling? It's like, what time do you get tired at? Not like, do you have low energy? It's like, do you get out of bed very easily in the morning? So it's like, that just might be normal for somebody for their whole life to be really tired in the morning all the time. For a naturopath, that's, there's a cortisol dysregulation going on. So, and it may have started in childhood. So that's why they think it's normal. Right. So, trauma may have started in childhood. That's why they think it's normal. Right. So, we also now have at the clinic in development all like assessments for trauma. Like, we're going specifically into the trauma side of things and not just how it works psychologically, but also, what are the stages that it starts to get embedded physiologically as well in the body. So that's in development. It's a huge area, as people involved in trauma work will know. But yeah, when you get to that point, there's a lot of information there available.
Yeah, if I can speak to that, Ray's right. These general markers of health, we get these tools to, I don't know if it's the right word I'm using here, to objectify or to get a level of feedback so that when you can check in with the patient again, you can see if there's been improvement or there hasn't been. And it's also really nice for the clients or the patient to get this feedback to see if there's improvement or not, because that really helps build motivation at times when you're asking them the right questions. And it's things they didn't think about before, and they're like, "Oh yeah, actually, now that you mentioned it, I don't have these thoughts anymore, or I don't have to take a nap at 4 p.m. anymore." And it's very encouraging on a client's behalf. So it's all about asking the right questions, and sometimes you do have to objectify from scale of 0 to 10 for some of them, and it's important to have.
So I see this as fundamental to the Lasting Health program, that we're building that skillfulness. We're skillfulness in the participants to make that a part of their day-to-day life, so that they can participate in new ways with the people who are supporting their health.
And it's consistent with education principles that traditionally most schools have been concerned with. Does the teacher know where the student is at? But with that, the student knowing where they are at, there's no real education that can ever happen. So that's part of what we're speaking to, is that assessment strategies have to go way beyond, we know what's going on with our participants. That metacognition ability to check for themselves where they are at is a critical component of our assessment strategy.
I want to add something quickly to that, because this is what's coming up in our integrative health programs, is body awareness. And so other people who are dealing, maybe Marcia has something to say about that too. But, and this is not naturopathic medicine specific, but it's just, I guess it's definitely more, in the somatic therapy world and trauma world, whereas as people's actual, you're actually increasing people's capacity to assess themselves.
Yes.
Right. So I do this in my MELT program. Like MELT method is all about increasing the proprioceptive awareness of the body so that you actually have body sense. We're healing fascia so that, because people literally can't feel. So part of the scanning is, what areas do you not feel? Like what areas do you lack awareness? Are you numb? Right. And then as those areas start to come back online, somebody has a whole new set of information that they're dealing with. So you can broaden that, you can use that on the body level, but you can also use that on the psychological level. And that's the blind spots. That's the not knowing what you don't know, right? When you suddenly have the ability to feel and perceive something, because you've been given a distinction, whether that's, you know, cognitively, or your body can actually perceive something that it used to not perceive.
Right. Ray, what is the MELT program?
The MELT method is a modality. So unlike naturopathic medicine, which is a system, right? It's a modality that I use as a naturopath, but that I've been trained in. And it was developed by a lady named Sue Hitzman in New York, and she's just one of these thought leaders in the physical medicine world. But she's so much more than that, because the work that she's doing is based on fascial and nervous system, and it's movement therapy, fascial therapy, nervous system therapy, all at the same time, that somebody does to themselves. And her whole thing that she's coined is hands-off body work. So it's like putting the power into the hands of the person to be their own therapist, to like do their own assessments. So there's all these assessments that a person does to themselves to know if their body is healing. I don't even touch the person. It's totally like, in my opinion, a revolutionary body work, because, you know, we're so used to people putting their hands on us and assessing us. Yeah. Right?
So that,
chiropractors.
It makes me think of this area that is part of the very first week. I'm calling it somatic reset, but it's basically the participant beginning to learn how to tune into their body. And it's, and so I'm just going to put that.
Yeah, definitely belongs
there. This is one that we need to explore.
Yeah.
I'm just going to.
It's great. It's a very easy to teach system. It's fun. Anybody can actually learn how to teach it. I would love for other people to learn how to teach it.
Is it MELT? Is that an acronym?
Nope. Just exactly what it is. Melt. You feel like you've melted.
Oh, fantastic.
MELT method. Yeah.
MELT method.
Yeah. I mean, trying to get more teachers trained. And I mean, you guys should definitely have somebody in Nelson Caslo area teaching that and doing that at the Sentinel. Because I certainly wouldn't be able to, you know, do it up there as frequently as you'll need it.
Is there a list of practitioners registered?
I was the first one in BC. Like, so there's now 5 in Vancouver, but like it's like for me to learn it, I had to fly to New York, right? And so I pretty much brought it here. And I did it for myself. I couldn't find an instructor to teach me how to do it. And after, you know, $20,000 of physical therapy, trying to get rid of my pain. And yeah, so it's amazing. I get 100% results with people. People love it.
And where does one have to go to learn that now? Still to New York?
The trainings travel around North America. I've brought her once here to Vancouver. Certainly could again, you know, for the main intro program, but yeah, it's ripe. It's ripe. If somebody wanted to bring it there, and they'd be the only one there doing it. And there's a ton of marketing around it. If you just search online, she's been on Dr. Oz like 4 times and all, you know, so like for whoever wanted to do that, it would be an easy sell. I could be making so much money doing it. I just don't advertise it, but I still have tons of people finding me online because they just find me on the instructor website and, you know, for MELT method. So, but it's just so, you know, all this philosophy about empowerment, right? Like you guys want to find the modalities in each of the areas that you're doing that resonate with the philosophy, right? And you know, so I found a body work method that resonated with that philosophy. Right? So.
Well, two of the descriptors that you mentioned, I think, are really important for us to keep in mind with everything. Simple and fun.
Yeah. Simple and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And effective. Very effective.
Yes. Yeah. Simple, fun, and effective.
John, we just discussed this the other day, you and I know Rigo also uses it in his practice. Are you considering teaching people how to muscle test?
I would like to consider it. I wonder how other people think about that.
That's interesting. Yeah. In my practice in Fort Langley, everything's very research focused, research based. If there's not a scientific paper to prove it, then it's not to be done. And so I sometimes consider myself the sinner in the block that sometimes does a little muscle testing here and there in patients. I personally find it to be an additional tool that I get to utilize, especially when I don't have tests in my hands, when I don't have objective results, when I need a little bit of information, and just something that helps me along the way. And I found it to be very effective and very helpful, especially when I sometimes find myself in a confusing dilemma or a struggling scenario, or we need some answers and either the patient doesn't have the funds or we don't have the time to do the tests, or things aren't just in place for that. And that's when the muscle testing really comes into play. So I do utilize it. I don't utilize it with every patient. It's on an as needed basis, but I'm very happy to have it as a part of my practice.
I'm really delighted to hear that, Rigo, because I find, I don't look at it as a definitive answer, but I see it as a way for me to tune in to myself.
That's right.
And the value of that is extraordinary and alone. And if it can help in providing that kind of information that you speak of, that's important in the absence of a test that allows you to take a step or go in a particular direction, and that's wonderful too.
I'll give you an example. For example, if I have a patient that I suspect has severe small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and we do a test for that, and it comes out positive, and I also muscle test them, and it comes out positive, and then they do a length of treatment, and then after about 2 weeks in time, I ask them several questions about how they're feeling and what level of improvement or not improvement that they're having. And at times, sometimes you get into this little bit like, oh, should we go back into phase 1 of the protocol? Should we go back into eradication? Do we need to retest? And then sometimes it's really nice for me to then to be like, well, you know what? I'm just going to muscle test you and see what's happening then. And if it turns out to be negative, and then I feel pretty good with what you're telling me, then we move forward to the next phase. Mm-hmm. If it tells me it's positive, then I think, hey, you know what? Let's retest it again and to get that level of confirmation. So it gives me just that extra little bit of edge to make some definitive or some, hard answers or hard decisions to make.
Yeah. So how would you look at it, take it out of the clinical setting, put it into the Lasting Health program? The participant is beginning to learn about their body in new ways.
I tend to use them, the tools, as an assisted diagnostic tool. Like many of the applied kinesiology, whether it's TBM or Jay Grossman's applied kinesiology, a lot of them can be treatment focused, where you use a certain activator on the spine to innervate nerves. I don't do a lot of that. I usually just use it as a bit of an assisted diagnostic tool, but I don't like to tell people like, hey, like I'm going to diagnose you based on what I'm doing here. No, because I tell them I can't really get a percentage of health of where you're at. I can get a yes or no response, and that's about the extent of it. So I don't really know in what sense I would utilize it, or it would be utilized at the Sentinel.
I think maybe one way to help you answer John's question is, what if I'm in the Lasting Health program, and what could I do with, is it possible to teach me that muscle testing thing, and what could I do with it? Like, you
mean in terms of me teaching patients on how they can do it for themselves?
Yes. Yeah, what could I do with it, like, for me?
That's difficult because I don't know there's a particular wording that was used. It's like interclinician consistency or something like that, and that tuning into yourself or tuning into someone else's energy requires a certain degree of skill, which I think is beautiful, right? Because I mean that's what Ray was talking about as well, about really getting in touch with ourselves. But they say that if you get a bunch of if I got like 10 random people off the street and told them, okay, this is what you do, this is what you do, and then you test this muscle, the degree of consistency between those people would not be at 100%, I'll tell you that. You know, there'd be certain failure rates, and I don't really know how to quantify that. I don't really know how I would be able to teach that
It's often
either.
part of
I don't think I'm in a
systems
position
too.
to do that.
Yeah, like some of these systems where we learn muscle testing, I mean, there's actually, depending on the system that you're using, you're going into organ systems. I mean, we're talking not only a medical degree and then also, you know, several $1,000 year-long training program to get to muscle test very specific things and segments. That, you know, it's part of it. It's part of the medical training. There are basic muscle testings that the layperson can do, and like I've seen people do this kind of thing when they ask themselves. I know Sasha does it a lot in treatment. I almost think that it would be something that a practitioner would be applying with somebody, unless there's some other specific way to use it, as like testing your intuition type thing.
Agreed.
Yeah. And because there's actually different ways of muscle testing too that different practitioners either agree on or disagree on, and some of them are you have to have ways that you test whether the person's on or off, or like false negatives and false positives. There's
If they're in fight or flight or in
like
stress mode, if they don't respond.
Yeah, if their nervous system's in a certain state, it won't work on them, that kind of thing. So it gets kind of complicated. Although I think some people are doing it in a less complicated way. Like when I've seen it done the most accurately, it's when it's like really a part of a a system. But I mean, John, you said you have experience with it. Maybe are you doing it with yourself or with other people?
I'm doing it with myself.
Yeah. So I think if somebody's already been exposed to it, but I would be hard to implement as a program thing.
And that's come from, many years of experiencing it in relationship to a practitioner, and simply practicing and exploring it for myself. So
like that could be doable and I totally appreciate we're not going to train the general public to have the level of expertise an actual expert has, but if it's been useful to you, John, over the course of the years of being exposed to it, maybe that's something that like what can we expose people to that keeps developing something, and it might not be like perfect and super accurate at the beginning, but it develops a sense of autonomy, of agency, and maybe some insights or something. I don't know in what sense it's useful to you, John.
Yeah, let me just say how I use it. I've been on a lot of protocols with lots of supplements prescribed by different practitioners and so on over the years, and I've come to I rely on practitioners for the kind of a foundation of that for myself. But then I self-prescribe in a sense. And that's, I'll emphasize, with a great deal of experience. I don't just grab supplements here and there. I've always had a hard time with B vitamins. And I was delighted to get to muscle test myself recently and ask the question, is this B vitamin going to work for my health and well-being today? And got the answer yes. Through muscle testing, now this is just me, it's just me tuning into my intuition in a sense. This is the way I look at it. Or some energy moving through my body. I don't claim to really understand, but I can tell which day I should take a B vitamin. I cannot take them every day. It's every third or fourth day I can take a B vitamin. And it seems to work. And I do that with foods as well. I've had so much experience with food intolerance and having foods come and go in terms of how well my body can utilize them. And I find that my muscle testing helps me tune in and ask of myself, is this something that I need? Can my body use this today? Is it good for my well-being? And I find my level of being able to tune in deepens. My capacity for that deepens over time. But I don't know how to train somebody in that.
Mhm.
You know, it looks kind of like a party trick, you know.
It's a great tool for a trained practitioner. It's a very good tool.
Yeah, if I could speak on that, like, you know, at times I have to put people on adrenal supplements, and and we know that the, you know, nutraceutical industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there's a lot of things sometimes found in this industry that, you know, you'd rather not give your patients. And so, you know, if I got 4 great products in front of me, I can utilize which one will work best for that patient. And I really appreciate to be able to really personalize the medicine to the patient. But I think what David's speaking to, if I get it right also, is giving patients the sort of tools that allows them to take home to be their own best advocates as well. You know, like, you know, John was saying, you know, I self-prescribe, which immediately sometimes gets this like negative connotation to it, but in a way really is, John, you are becoming your own best physician, and that comes from experience. And what we're trying to really also do at the Sentinel is empower people and allow them to really get in tune with themselves and to realize what it is I need, what I need it, and how much do I need of it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think that echoes what I was thinking about. Yeah. So now,
my sense is to leave muscle testing on the list as a place to explore, but there seems to be a line has been drawn that it really is not something that should be taught to a participant in the Lasting Health program, but depending on what kind of clinical interface there is with the participants in the program and practitioners, it may be something that might be used.
We could even do a course on muscle reflexology, muscle testing at some point. And then I just want to update that there is a MELT program out of Nelson delivered by the Women's Clinic.
Ah.
I think I know that person now that you're saying that. I think I've talked with her. Cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I don't know I'll check what level she's at.
So let's put that on the list for follow-ups and to mount and contact in Nelson.
Are we ready to move on from evaluation? We've kind of bridged over into some program content, but there's one more piece in the development of systems and structures.
I just wanted to say something about evaluation, and that was I connected with an old friend of mine called Kyle Pierce, who we actually developed the dental clinic in Strathcona together 20 years ago now. And he's continued on being a consultant in the health industry, and he's totally brilliant, and he has a lot of, I won't go into it, but anyway, he's developed a sort of a bridging pathway to modernize our health system. And he's doing his best to work with the Ministry of Health and all those people that can't see these things. But I did actually have a conversation about what we're doing, and he's a little busy to be involved at this level, but I talked about the evaluation piece, and he said he'd be very happy to look over things once we've got ourselves more established, to see if we are using, for instance, the right language as far as being credible with people in the, with policy people in the health business, in the health industry. It's not an industry, in the health services. And I just thought that would be really helpful. So his name is Kyle, K-Y-L-E Pierce, P-E-A-R-C-E, and we should just have him as sort of a person that we can go to consult from time to time.
Okay, I just put him on the note on the evaluation bubble.
Having said that, that makes me think, you know, all those people who, like there's some people in Kaslo who are a little scared by my previous activities in the world of bringing change. I should put in the dental clinic because, like, who can argue with a dental clinic for kids in a low-income area? I'm going to add that to my back into my bio. Okay, I'm done.
Any more comments on questions on evaluation? There's one more item on the systems and structures, and that's down at the bottom here, and it is the cost of delivery and cost to participant. And I don't know what can be said to that at this point, but it is on the map. And we're going to need to start working with it at some point fairly soon. Right, Richard?
I'm not, oh, are you going to talk to that, Richard?
No, oh, definitely. No, definitely something to, there's a research area in there. There's, so what else do you have in mind, Gillian?
Well, it's our research that we're doing with our creative people, our branding people, is very clearly saying that the big sort of industry coming up that we're just on the cusp of is wellness travel, and so people, probably baby boomers, are not just satisfied with going on cruises anymore, you know. And when we were in Mexico just recently, there was a little group of people from Santa Fe who had flown there for a holiday and also to do yoga every day with their yoga teacher. So I'm just thinking about the simple, fun, and effective, Ray. And I think we just need to consider adding in some fun. And as we've talked before, of course, the whole reason to be visiting the Sentinel is how being on the land and close to those mountains and the lake enhances whatever healing and whatever good stuff is going on. And so when we're designing it, just to, as we've said to other practitioners coming to do whatever other things, you know, include time to be in nature, I think we have to remind ourselves to do this with the Lasting Health Program and include fun things so that they're not, you know, so that their experience is also enjoyable, and from that level of actually just having fun, you know, some excursions or some whatever, you know, whatever to match their level of ability, of course, not a boot camp, but something where they're experiencing nature and enjoying themselves. And so that does kind of tie into this question because we're talking about how much it's going to cost. So I'm thinking of it as an all-round holistic experience, which is obviously a bit more than a vacation, but thinking people spend money to go on vacation to different places. So my thought.
Yeah, and we've been in contact with a number of people that do outdoor activities. That's one thing. But then, in the area of cost, we would look at, and we can go further into this later, into the research component, but there's the actual cost of being at the Sentinel, and there's the cost of each program and what each practitioner's general rate is. So taking all those into consideration. And then it's the way of delivery. Is it a one cost thing, or is it a basic cost with add-ons? Like if you do two treatments a day, it's X. If you do 3 treatments a day, it's different activities. So these are things to consider.
We did have a very interesting conversation a while back now with a client of mine who had been to the Chopra Institute up in Squamish. And they sort of had a kind of a large-ish, but the fee was a flat fee. And then while you were there, you could have as many massages or whatever treatments or sessions. I think that's what my memory says, John. So that's another way of doing it, which might also keep it simple.
I chip in just a tiny bit here. I feel like I'm replicating so many conversations we've had at Empower Health. It's hilarious. If you have a licensed healthcare practitioner under Health Canada, you can't sell in packages or prepaid treatments, blah, 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 no discount incentives. There's obviously a lot of people probably doing it differently, but as soon as you involve somebody who has a massage therapist, acupuncturist, a chiropractor, naturopathic doctor, because this is the problem that we've faced in Empower Health, because we're developing programs just like this in Vancouver, though, and where you want to have multiple practitioners involved, and it'd be so nice to just charge a price, right? Or have a membership, right? And there's actually legal issues around that for licensed healthcare professionals. So again, way too big of a conversation. This is like a 3.5-year conversation at Empower Health on how to do this. So happy to transfer some of that knowledge. But, this is one of the reasons why we haven't launched as quickly as we have our programs, because it is just the dealing with. So this is, again, getting into, how to do this. That's a question that we're asking. We're still trying to solve. When you start to involve people who have these, that are part of the Health Professions Act, essentially, there's these lots and lots of pages of legal stuff that you have to go through. So happy to have that conversation with a task force when the time comes.
So is that then a cost plus then?
What do you mean? Sorry?
Is it like you have a basic fee, and then if you have a licensed practitioner, it's that you add those fees on top of?
It's so much more complicated than that. You can't have like there's so many layers to this. So there's incentivizing treatments. It'd be like your doctor giving you incentive, right? You always look at it from the other side of the spectrum. Like it's anything that can be construed as, incentivizing and marketing and referral fees and all these kinds of things. So, part of the way we're trying to get around it is, once I get out of debt, Empower Health not becoming a health professions corporation, so that Empower Health can take, just like the Sentinel can take a fee, right, a program, and then pay practitioners. But the thing is naturopaths can't be employees either. Like, we can't deliver services as an employee of somebody else, because then instead of being beholden to the patient, and what's in their best interest, I could be beholden to the Sentinel and what their best interest is and what their profit motives are. So it all has to do with ethics around patient care. And I'm sure there's ways around it. And this is why I think you do need to talk to retreat centers and other places in terms of how they do it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people bending the rules, but it's like, no, in some cases people don't actually care. But when we started doing Empower Health, we wanted to make programs the centerpiece of Empower Health eventually, right? So this is why we're doing it at a pace to make it we want to make it really actually work legally. So if anybody, because in the naturopathic community, we're quite small, and because we're becoming more and more people are looking at us, more and more you're getting other naturopaths that are reporting other naturopaths, right? So it's like, we're trying to stay cool in the public eye because of how scrutinized we are from the regular medical system, right? So a massage therapist might not be as big of a deal, right? But for me in my clinic, and because, we want to be at the forefronts of this, we've been really looking at that closely and how to work with other people and have it be legal. So I don't know how it would impact it. I honestly don't. It'd just be, that's something to put on your radar for when you are developing fees and how you're going to pay people that are part of the Health Professions Act. You need to know the legalities of what you're dealing with there. Because I bet you anything, like when I was looking into this, I just didn't know, right? So even somebody who you're hiring might not know that this, because they're just never been in a situation like that. Like I learned because I called my college, right?
Yeah.
If I can speak to that though, at the Integrated Health Clinic, there's 13 naturopathic doctors, and we're all employees.
You're employees of Naturopathic Corporation. You can be employed by another naturopath. You can't be employed by somebody who's not a naturopath. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's inside the people that we have. Some of them that are not on this call. I think that's doable. It could be put under a lasting health practitioners piece, and then that would be a separate company. So rather than the Sentinel, it would be
naturopath subsidiary, because we can employ other practitioners. Naturopaths can employ other practitioners. Like I can employ massage therapists, but that massage therapist can't employ me, for example.
Right.
Yeah, but we have doctors on there, and naturopaths, and we have you.
Oh, so you mean all those like chiropractic clinics or whatnot that have naturopathic doctors working there? That's technically not legal.
It depends how their contracts are set up, but there's probably something not legal about their contracts. Definitely. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
All right. This completes the development of systems and structures, and I guess we're going to need a task force for each one of these areas ultimately. I'm just checking the time, and we are we're coming up to noon. I just can't believe how fast the time has gone. We have touched on program content in our conversation, but I'd like to just come over here quickly and run through this as an overview. In a conversation the other day with Jillian, I was mentioning that I like the idea of 1 year, but I also like the idea of 9 months. And I was putting in a resident week, so an immersion week to kick off the program, and one to end the program, or completion week. And then to bring everybody back for a week at the 3-month point and at the 6-month point and at the 9-month point. And then that made 5 immersion weeks, and that seemed to be a lot. And then I began to think in terms of the program, the basic thrust of the program happening within 9 months, and then something else happening at the end in terms of the last 3 months. So still keep the 1 year idea of hold that for the overall program, but the last 3 months would be something a little bit different. And in the first 9 months, we have like a gestation, birth kind of thing. And that ties into cost, because I'm thinking, what the cost of somebody coming to Kaslo, to the Sentinel for a week, that's considerable. And if we just keep going out and out in terms of 5 weeks is a lot, 4 weeks is less. So that's my thinking is kind of going along those lines as I feel my way into what kind of a program is going to work. I also have quite a bit of experience a long time ago working in I was the director of a private film school. And we worked with a model very similar to this in that we had a cohort starting every 2 months. And so they would overlap. And so every 2 months you'd have a cohort completing and another one beginning. And it creates quite a dynamic energy of people moving through, and the opportunity for a lot of people to be brought together in community.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I like the idea of the intake, and then there's people that are in the second, third, and fourth rounds are mentoring there and giving the experience the next intake group,
Yeah.
which is really a great model of health and also another model of communication.
Yeah. And it allows us to build a peer support system that I think is allows for a lot of possibility.
Great, great.
John, I have one little question.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, do you have an idea of kind of what your ideal size of the cohort would be?
I'm thinking 10.
Agreed. That's
Okay.
a good number.
When we start, I think 12 could. But I think we should look at this. Was that Rigo that said 10?
Yeah, it's just when I went to Germany and I visited one of the cancer clinics in geez, I don't know, I think it's called Kassel, and I asked him what's the magic number for the number of on-site residence clients you'd want to have, and he said 10. 10 is the magic number. So when you said 10, I just
Yeah.
resonated for me.
And I've heard something magical about 9 for some reason. I can't remember exactly why. But that means if there were 10 cohorts of 10, that means that there would be 40 people in the Lasting Health program at any given time, once we're fully rolled out. So just to come over here, program elements and timelines, and then there's a screening and a pre-intake period of time. And that's a period of time that allows us to prepare a participant for coming in. So there's a lot that can be done prior to the participant arriving. And that's a whole area to look at in terms of program content. How do we interact with them? What are we asking of them before they come? What kind of information can we gather from them? What kind of powerful questions can we ask that will lead them to begin to think about their health in new ways? And it's also a way to gather information that is going to then lead to reframing. Like, everyone's got an illness narrative. How did I get sick? And some people are entrenched in that. And that's why I love the idea of healing narrative, learning to tell your story in a different way. We're coming up to the hour. Does anyone want to speak to this in a general way and help wrap this up so that we can complete the call?
So I would say that that we need to what we would look at is people looking through this program through the mind map and seeing what attracts them, and putting their name next to them, and then seeing where the gaps are, so that need to be filled. So I know that I'm attracted to certain areas of marketing and technology. Others might be interested in the planning of the programs, etc. So that would be one thing. So.
Yeah, and I want to add that I have not, I've started fleshing out the first quarter, the intake and onward. I'm now beginning to think in terms of learning modules that would come in at the 3-month mark and at the 6-month mark. So I'm going to be focusing on those in the next week and populating that 3, 6, 9 months points with more ideas. So I'm interested to, I keep asking, what do people need to learn first? How do you not overwhelm them in the beginning? How do you get a good foundation going? And then what pieces do you bring in after a period of time? that's going to be my area of focus.
And I think between now and our next call, we'll be populating these teams and looking for an accountable person for each of them. And so my suggestion is that you be in contact with each person, John, on our existing team now to see where they're at and what they'd like, and if they would like to contribute and where they would like to do that, including, of course, people on the call today, unless they already know and they're just going to fit it in after we finished. But also the people who haven't been on the call, and then let's see where our gaps are and who we might call in that we haven't been talking to yet for particular expertise.
So we're now at a point where we can see how breaking down into smaller groups, creating task forces for specific items is the way to move forward.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
And then I also think there's as Richard has been talking about more general terms, this idea of partnering with existing clinics such as Empower Health or wherever, who are just using that because that's the one that's on the call today, is a really vital part to connect in for obvious reasons, a whole bunch of reasons. Mostly though for the client themselves, that unless of course they live in Calgary or somewhere in the States, but we could also work on building relationships in other places. I'm sure we can do that.
Yeah. So I am really excited by what we have covered today and the potential for this map to support this development process. And I'm also going, whoa, okay, we got lots to do and a lot to look at. And definitely it's all unfolding in a very beautiful way.
Thank you, John. John, can you put us all up on the screen again?
Oh, right, I need to get out of this. I could stop.
While you're doing that, John, I just wanted to go back to David's question. I do think there's great value in a sort of an initial intake of us into the program, whoever would like to participate in it, to, work it all out as we're going through it.
Okay.
So I think there's great value in that. I would love to be part of that. So I'm just saying.
You're talking about first cohort being,
first cohort, yeah.
Being a designed cohort.
I think they used to be called guinea pigs, but we don't say that anymore.
Guinea pigs, right. Hey, there you are. I haven't seen any of you for like an hour. We're at the top of the hour. Are we ready to say goodbye?
Yes.
Farewell.
Thank you, everybody. What a great meeting.
Likewise.
Yeah. Lots of great, incredible input. So I look forward to next time.
Fabulous.
Thank you so much for joining us, all of you.
Have a lovely Sunday.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye.